Alright, bonjour na ganawa maga nagiduk, Leonard Sumner ni Indigenous Cast, Kagishki Kamagak and Dunji, Nishna Beg Indigo. My name is Leonard Sumner. I come from Treaty 2 territory, a reserve called Little Saskatchewan. I'm a Nishnabeg, also known as Ojibwe or Chippewa, even some places. There's also the dialect of the language we speak is called Soto. But yeah, I'm from Manitoba. I live in Winnipeg now, and I'm a hip hop. I'm a hip hop country guy. I kind of mix hip hop and country together.
So I was listening to some of your music, and
yeah.
it's really different, like a lot different from what I usually hear. You obviously said it was a mixture of like country and hip hop.
Yeah.
You play your own instrument. You play guitar. How long have you been playing? How did you learn? How did you pick up your guitar skills?
You want the long story or the short story?
Whichever suits you best, man.
Okay. So I got started off singing at a lot of, like, there's Treaty Day celebrations for when we signed the treaties. There's usually annual events with baseball tournaments and stuff like that, singing contests. It's a big community gathering, and each community has their own celebration, and sometimes they have singing contests. So when I was younger, I would enter in the singing contest because there was a chance to win some extra money, and it was like really fun to go up. I felt like a rush from going up and performing, but I'd always lose. Like, I'd get like second or third. Sometimes I would win first if I was locally, like if people knew me or whatever. But I'd always lose to someone playing guitar, and like I was like, man, I should learn how to play guitar. So when I was like 20, I bought myself a guitar from this little pawn shop that we had on our reserve that's no longer open anymore. And the next year I moved to college, and I was living in Brandon, Manitoba. So there's not much to do in Brandon. So in a lot of my spare time, that's when like YouTube was just coming around, like 2006, around that time. I started learning guitar chords off YouTube and like just looking on the internet for guitar chord shapes and stuff like that. So I learned a few cowboy chords, and I'd already been doing rapping for a long time, and I was already singing, but I didn't know how to play guitar and sing at the same time. So it started out a little bit as vain. I wanted to win competitions, like it was a vanity thing. I wanted to go up on stage with a guitar and kind of be this, big star kind of thing. But as soon as I learned how to play and started getting better, it became more about just a form of expression and art for myself. And I really found like I could turn to my guitar even when I was feeling lonely or sad, and it was always there to help me, you know what I mean? So it became more of like just like a helping thing for me. And then when I started transducing my songs from hip-hop over into acoustic stuff, people really found that to be unique. And I just happened to meet the right people through different music programs at Manitoba Music. And everything kind of just fell into place after that. I started writing more stuff and putting more of my older songs onto, like, figuring out the chords to use them as a singer-songwriter thing as opposed to the hip-hop style. But it all started with a little bit of vanity, and now it's turned into a nice little, career and something I just love to do, and I get to share across the world, basically.
Okay, dude, you went to school. What were you studying in school? Were you doing music or?
No, I did a media production course. So it was like web design and radio, on air stuff. There was like television switching, video editing, shooting, audio recording, documentary stuff for radio. So like an all-encompassing media program. And then while I was there, I learned how to record. And when I was done, I moved back to my reserve. Actually, I worked for a television station here in Winnipeg for about 9 months, and I got sick of it, so I moved back home to the res, and I was working at the school. And while I was there, I recorded my EP, which was called Res Poetry, for digital download. And I put it online, and I recorded it all myself. I bought beats from producers and stuff like that. And that's how I got my start.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it sounds really good. It's really unique. You know what I mean? It's got a really cool twist with the acoustic stuff and, you know, your own guitar playing. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, originally...
How long have you been doing this, dude? Like, how long, like, you said that was 2006?
No, this album that I just released, the stuff that you're hearing, was finally recorded in 2013.
Oh, dang.
Some of the songs are like 5 years old, and I had released them as hip-hop recordings previously on an EP that was called Res Poetry, and then now that kind of became my brand, so I used it for my full-length album as well. So out there's a digital download. You could find a lot of 5 of the songs that are on my full-length album. They were released on an EP, but they're in a hip-hop form. So they almost sound like completely different songs, but they're the same lyrics.
Dang. Well, that's pretty cool. I'll look into that, man. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, right on, man. Thank you.
Oh, sweet. So do you do you have like your own home recording setup that you record out of your house, or did you actually go through a studio to record your full length album?
I recorded at a studio for my full length.
Oh. So do you do any sort of recording on your own then right now, or?
Originally, that's what I did with the hip hop stuff. I recorded a lot of my own stuff, but nowadays, like, it's more about getting the professionals, the guys who have been doing it their whole life, to kind of get the best sound for you. And you pay them, you hire them, and it's the best results. Because if I try to record it myself, that's just going to be a big headache, basically.
There's a lot of time and a lot of money that goes into it to get the right sound, to get the professional sound. So I know what you mean there. Like it's a real difficult art form in itself to record and produce. And
and these days it seems very unappreciated. You know what I mean? Like, you work so hard to put so much time and money into an album, and people they pay 99 cents for one song. You know what I mean? Like, people don't listen to whole albums anymore, and it's kind of like, I don't know if I like that or not, or if that's just the way the world is now. But I like an album. It feels like a complete. You know what I mean? When you can put something start to finish, and it's an experience. But now, like, it's all about just one song. It's
all about singles. That's how artists nowadays make their money is singles. Album sales are at an all-time low, and so record companies and producers, they put a lot of emphasis on singles nowadays. So that's kind of the musical trend right now is having the single out there to carry an artist. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I still believe in the albums, though. I think, the tried, tested, and true will always be there, and once the fad kind of goes out, albums will still be an important thing, I think, at the end of the day.
Sweet. Yeah, I agree, dude. I really do agree with that. That's pretty neat that you say that. As a native person, do you get nervous when you record or when you perform or anything like that?
I used to when I was younger, get nervous about performing, but not so much anymore. I get a little excited about it. You know what I mean? Like, and it's a little bit nerve-wracking to record songs, because I always kind of see my songs as living things. They kind of live with me, they grow with me, and they change over time. And like, to put it on something that's so final, it's like you're taking a photograph of your song for that day, and that's how it's going to look for the rest of its life almost. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And for me, that's how I had to kind of come to terms with recording it, because I always felt like they were alive, like they're living things. But when you record them, it kind of feels like, I don't know, like, it's a weird feeling for me anyway. But the way I got over that feeling was, I was just like, it's just picture day. You know what I mean? These songs are graduating into a new form, and it's picture day for them, and that's how they're going to be seen for the next, 10 years or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But I don't get nervous too much anymore. Of course, you get nervous about new songs because you don't know if they suck or if they're good. Like, you get self-conscious about stuff like that. And you never, like, every time I write a song, it feels like it's the last one I'm ever going to be able to write. Like, it feels like I'm never going to be able to write another song, and then next thing you know, I got another song done, and it's the same cycle again. It feels like, oh shit, how am I gonna write another one? And then another one comes to you, it's kind of a weird little factory.
I noticed that there's a really big social trend going on right now of a fascination with native culture. I don't know if it's going on in Manitoba as much, but I'm seeing like a ton of like dream catchers.
And mucklucks.
Yeah, dream catchers and geometric patterns on women's clothing, you know. Like a lot of native oriented art and stuff like that. What's your take on mainstream society, you know, taking a liking to stuff like that?
I think it's been around for a while, you know, like the hippies were all about that too, right?
Yeah.
As far as, you know, like, I think what I always tell people when I get asked this question is they always say, oh, it's cool to be native now, it's cool to be an Indian. I always say, no, it's always been cool. It's just the rest of the world is just catching up now, you know, and a lot of people get upset with cultural appropriation stuff, like they don't want to be considered a trend or, you know, but like if it's a part of your life, you know, like that's not a trend. Those people are going to come and go with their fashion, you know, trends, but that's always still going to be a part of your culture. Like they're just kind of coming in and, you know, I guess the word is appropriating it, but I don't know. I don't know how to feel about all that. Personally, I think it's kind of cool to see indigenous people on, like, you know, our styles going out to the rest of the world. Like we're on the world level, we always have been. But some people get offended by it, and you know, everybody's different. Everybody has different teachings on things and different knowledge of stuff. So I don't really get too easily offended by stuff.
Dang. That's cool. I've had like other people be like, you know, it's disrespectful, but that's cool that you say that though. You know, I think it's forward thinking. You know, because you know, one way or another, you have to learn to live with other people. You know, you have to live to just kind of accept them.
Well, look at us. You know, we watch TV. I have a guitar. I have couches. I drive a truck. You know what I mean? Like nobody's upset at me for driving a truck. Other than, you know, environmentalists, I guess. But everybody's gonna be mad at something, man. You know, like I just wanna live my life the way I'm gonna live it, and let people live their lives the way they're gonna live theirs, and try not to hurt anybody along the way. Just be good to one another, and you know, like try not to get mad about the little things. You know, like just enjoy it. Enjoy the ride.
How about, okay, you said you had to go to school, so you had to leave the reserve. How's that with you, the transition from leaving the reserve to, you know, functioning in, you know, white society?
There's little growing pains with everything that you do in life, I think, you know, and I had to leave the res because I wanted to pursue education, and I had goals that I wanted to accomplish, and at that time it wasn't really possible to get a further education while living on the reserve. So I left, you know, and my grandfathers were very forward-thinking people. My grandpa was a farmer. My grandpa on my dad's side was a businessman. He was like one of the first people on the res to have a car, a snowmobile, and hydro, like back in the day. They used to work with the white farmers back in the day. Like they were very, you know, they were just smart people, and they got by doing what they had to do. And then for me, you know, like just leaving the res was like a thing, because when you grow up on the reserve, you get it fed into you that there's nothing there. Like there's no opportunities, there's nothing there. But there's a lot you can do on the reserve. You know what I mean? There's a lot more freedom with your life that you can do. It's just all about the decisions that you make. And then integrating, I guess, or in quotations, integrating into the mainstream society for me was, you know, it was pretty easy, because our reserve is only 2.5 hours from a big city, about 45 minutes from a fair-sized town. So I had experience, you know, going into a town and, you know, whatever, like buying groceries or whatever it may be. And it was pretty easy for me. Like I missed home a lot, but and I missed being around like indigenous people, because our sense of humor is just something that you can't get anywhere else. But I appreciated like learning from non-indigenous people, and learning that, like, when I went to college, I went to a community college. I didn't even think I was smart enough for that. I was like, man, I don't know how I'm gonna do. I'm gonna fail. Blah blah blah. I had all these doubts. Then when I got in, like, I was the one people came to when they had troubles. Like whenever they needed help with a project or if they needed some advice, they would come and ask me. So I had to understand, like, oh wow, I am smart. I'm not just a big fish in a small pond. I'm actually a smart person that can help other people. Doesn't matter what race they are. So I learned that away from home, and that's something I might not have learned if I would have just stayed on the Reds forever.
I have a really quick question. Some people say that somehow, some way, eventually, you'll go back to the reserve after you finish your school or after you go on a long trip or after being away from home for 10, 12, or 15 years, that most Native people who grow up on the reserve tend to go back to the reserve. Just not necessarily for bad reasons, but just to be around, family or friends or just a familiar society. Do you believe that to be true?
I think that's everybody's dream, because we come from like very poor economic places, a lot of us, you know what I mean? So we always have a dream that we're gonna be the ones that are gonna move away and get educated and come back and be the good chief. But that's a stereotype in itself, you know what I mean? Like, it requires personal leadership from everybody. One person's not going to be able to save a whole clan of people. It's got to be personal effort from everybody and working as a community together. So, like, I think a lot of us buy into that when we're younger, that we're going to go away and we're going to get our education and we're going to come back and we're going to save the place. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But really, it's all about just creating a better life for yourself. And hopefully when people see you living a better life for yourself, it encourages them to do the same for themselves. So it's complicated. I always want to go back home. Like, I love where I grew up. I love that little piece of land that we got, and I love the people there and my family. And yeah, we didn't always have the most opportunities, but yeah, I think it is always a dream for us to go back home.
Yeah, I know what you mean, dude. I can't, honestly, when I was at home growing up, I remember thinking to myself, man, I can't wait to get out of here. I'm going to get out of here. I'm never going to come back. Having that kind of attitude. And I've been away from home for like 7 years now in total. And I'm just like, every Christmas, I just really look forward to going home. You know what I mean?
Do you see the similarities between small towns, though? Like, it's exactly the same for people in small towns. And it's kind of funny because I moved from the Res to Brandon, which is a city of about 50,000 people. And everybody that lives in Brandon that grows up there wants to get out of Brandon. And they go to a bigger town after that. You know what I mean? So, like, everybody has that idea that this town isn't big enough for me. Like, doesn't matter where the hell you are. There's always people that want. I think that's a human condition. They always want more and never satisfied a lot of times with the basic stuff that you do have, and you always want more. I don't know if that's a product of capitalism or just human nature, but yeah, it goes beyond indigenous people. Everybody's like that, I think, or at least everybody in society.
I was doing some research on Native American health, and aside from the fact that Native or First Nations people have the highest rate of diabetes in the world, but they also have the highest suicide rate. What do you think contributes to that? I know it was in Canada, it was 11 times higher than the national average. For suicide. Anyways, yeah.
I think those two things go hand in hand. You know what I mean? It's connected. There's an old saying, they say you are what you eat. You know what I mean? And if you're eating food that's making you sick, then you're going to be sick, Like, and in the mind too, if you're not getting the proper nutrients to your mind, and then your brain's not going to function as well as a brain that does get the proper nutrients. And if you're not getting the proper amount of exercise, then it's going to lead to depression. So let's say those two are connected. The food and the exercise. And then, like, suicide too is connected to that. And I hear a lot of connection between brain trauma and suicide, and like that's a real thing. You know what I mean? Some people grow up, you know what it's like living on the res. You know, very small towns. There's fights. You know, people get into fights with each other, and you know, people can get brain trauma from those, and you can't see it because you know it doesn't show on the outside, but your brain, you know, is getting damaged by that, and it's affecting the natural, you know, cycle and healthy cycle of the way it should operate. And if people aren't getting the proper nutrients to repair it, then you know lead to like things like depression, and those lead to, you know, addiction and drug use or whatever, and then that could lead to suicide. And of course, like the void of not knowing who you are. A lot of places people have issues with identity, so you know, like that can lead into thoughts of suicide, you know, and stuff like that. If you don't have enough resources around you to help you kind of get out of that negative cycle, then you know you're more likely to go down that road.
Wow, that's a intelligent response. I appreciate that. That's crazy, dude. I mean, I've been doing a lot of research on stuff like that and on Native American health, and yeah, I mean it's pretty bad on a lot of these reserves here. But Native youth, I know some reserves comprise of up to 70% of Native youth being under the age of 25. So a lot of young Native people out there in the world today, and a lot of them gravitate toward music. So for anyone out there who might, you know, listen to this, what kind of advice or words of encouragement would you give people who are, you know, starting out with music, in, like, you know, where you were several years ago?
When I first started making music, I was looking at quotes, like reading little quotes about stuff, and there was one quote that stuck out to me. Was, "How vain is it to sit down and write when you've not stood up to live?" And then I read a quote by Shakespeare, "To thine own self be true." So like when I first started making music, I was imitating what I heard, you know, out of the United States, out of the big cities. You know, I was trying to rap about stuff that I had no idea what the hell I was even talking about. And, you know, like I'm glad I didn't grow up in the YouTube era, because I would have been plastering it probably all over the internet, and it would have been just the stupidest material ever. But over time, when I started looking into like great writing and musicians that I admired, like they were always telling stories about whatever it was. They were always telling a good story. So I figured, you know, like our voice as Indigenous people has been silenced for a long time. We don't really have a whole lot of people we can look to as far as musicians and storytellers right now. But I would get them to look into the Indigenous writers that we have. You know, there's a lot of great Indigenous writers out there, a lot of great Indigenous musicians out there. Just like get yourself right into that. You know, listen to it all, and listen to stuff that likes you and that you like, and stuff that excites you. And always keep learning. Get your education. Learn more than just about music. Learn your languages. Learn your culture. That's going to help you with your identity. When we started, the first thing I opened up with was an introduction in my language. In the language, you introduce who you are and where you're from and what nation you are. And those are three main things for identity for me. I know who I am. You know what I mean? I know where I'm from, and I know what I am. So for me, I'm grounded. For a lot of young people out there, they might not be able to answer that fully. So to learn your culture is very important. And yeah, just, you know, meet good people, practice lots, get your education, and have fun.